Hi, I'm Danica from the Saskatoon Public Library with another installment of Storytime for Grown-Ups. I'm really happy to be here coming at you from Treaty 6 territory, a place where people have gathered to listen and tell stories for tens of thousands of years. And so today I'm going to read another segment from Jan Wong's book, Apron Strings, published by Goose Lane. So we started out listening to the introduction, the prologue, and today we're going to go to France. So this is chapter 7, Odette's Flan. When we first arrived, Marie Catherine had been close to a breakdown from sleep deprivation. The baby monitor in Mamie's salon was so sensitive, Marie Catherine could hear her mother's oxygen machine wheezing, shh, 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 all through the night. And because Mamie knew her daughter was listening, she made frequent and voluble demands. She wanted to get out of bed. She complained she was thirsty, exhausted, but also worried that she wouldn't be able to teach us enough French cooking. Marie Catherine had dropped notes in neighbors' mailboxes up and down the Route de Bérengères, explaining that a mother and son were arriving from Canada to learn home cooking. Could anyone help? Natalie, a neighbor across the road, offered to let us watch her husband prepare a dinner party. But wires got crossed and we missed it. Then the same husband offered to teach us brioche, but by then we were so busy we sent regrets. Another neighbor, Odette Clissac, volunteered to teach us a classic French dessert. But in the excitement of her first ever spa appointment, Marie Catherine forgot to tell us. When Odette dropped by that Saturday to fetch us, Sam and I wore a romance sorcière at the Shoe Museum. Odette came again the next morning. Again, Marie Catherine forgot to tell us. We went to Mass and then lunch at Bernadette's 12 hours too late. Marie Catherine slapped her forehead and confessed we'd once again stood Odette up. I figured we'd burned our bridges, but I looked on the bright side. Monday would be our first slow day. I was brushing my teeth around 10 a.m. when Marie Catherine pounded on the bathroom door. "Can you go over to Odette's in half an hour?" I roused Sam, who groaned and rolled over. 10 minutes later, I called him again, to no avail. Marie Catherine arrived as reinforcement. "What are you doing here?" she said, barging into Sam's darkened room. "You're supposed to be there." She pointed vaguely in the direction of the kitchen. Sam sprang out of bed and pulled on his clothes. We raced out of the house in the general direction of there. Standing on the Route de Bérengères, my son and I looked at one another. Where exactly was there? I was still having trouble orienting myself inside the house. Never mind, outside. Sam thought I knew where Odette lived. I thought he had understood Marie Catherine's finger pointing. We hustled blindly down the road, worried we were late, conscious we had twice stood Odette up, arguing about which side of the road Marie Catherine meant. We hesitated in front of a creamy stucco house with pale green shutters, 3 small chimneys, and a terracotta tiled roof. Might this be Odette's home? Gingerly, we rang the doorbell. Someone inside shouted that the door was unlocked. We opened it a crack. "Est-ce que Odette demeure ici?" I called out. "Oui, oui, je suis Odette. Allez, allez." We climbed the stairs to the second floor. A woman with pure white hair waited at the top. Without so much as a handshake, she led us into her spotless utilitarian kitchen. Odette, I realized, was the neighbor who had sheltered the young Iraqi couple in her ground-floor apartment. Compared to handling refugee overflow, perhaps our double no-shows were only a minor annoyance in her life. She brushed off our apologies. "Pas de problème," she said briskly, donning an apron. At 80, Odette was as rotund as the Michelin tire man, but in a grandmotherly, huggable way. Even though she was at home and about to impart a cooking lesson, like Mamie, she was dressed formally in a dark wool burgundy skirt that fell below her knees, a flowered blouse, a thick hose, and low-heeled leather shoes. Her kitchen was simple but cozy. Lace curtains covered windows overlooking the same garlic fields. Her stove was an ancient electric model. Her toaster, obviously rarely used, was on the floor, relegated to a corner next to her iron. A mid-century green formica table in the center of the room doubled as a work table. We're going to make flan today. It's very simple, formerly called crème renversée au caramel. It was such a classic dessert that it had been on Julia Child's final exam at Le Cordon Bleu in 1950. Like crème brûlée, it was always eaten chilled. Despite its name, it used no cream, only sugar, eggs, and milk, baked slowly until silky smooth. Odette, a farmer's daughter, said that it was a dish from her childhood. On the farm, everything was available, she said. In our region, the Drôme is full of delicious things. Odette bent down, opened a low cupboard, and pulled out an ancient aluminum ring mold with scalloped edges. Setting it on her stove, she tossed in 10 sugar cubes, splashed in some tap water, and turned on the flame. Do not stir it, she cautioned, or the sugar would crystallize around the spoon and create a mess. She carefully swirled the liquid around until it turned a deep amber, then shut off the heat and tilted the mold to coat the sides. Odette abruptly decided to double the recipe. She melted more sugar in another saucepan, then poured the caramel into individual ramekins, swirling each to coat the sides. In another pot, she heated a liter of milk, dissolving 10 more sugar cubes. As an afterthought, she added 2 tiny envelopes of vanilla-scented sugar. While the milk heated, she whisked in eggs from Marie-Catherine and beat in a cup of sugar. I got this cookbook when I got married, 60 years ago, she said, pulling out a tattered tome. She knew the recipe for crème renversée by heart, but wanted Sam and me to read it. Unlike Bernadette's cookbook, which was well used but pristine, Odette's was yellowed and stained. It's all busted up because I use it so much, she said, shrugging. Like Bernadette's, it had hundreds of brief recipes. The one for crème renversée was a single paragraph and suggested that the oven be hot, but not too hot. Odette added the hot milk to the egg and sugar mixture, ladle by ladle. She's tempering the mixture, Sam explained to me. Otherwise, she'll end up with scrambled eggs. As she boiled some water to prepare a bain-marie, she asked Sam, "What do you call it in English?" Sam said, "A bain-marie." Odette laughed. Her legs were thick and swollen, and she had trouble walking. Still, Odette stood during an entire cooking lesson. She exercised with a daily swim at the community pool. Each year, Marie-Catherine told me, Odette went away to a fat farm to lose weight, but always returned, her face gaunt, her figure as rotund as ever. Widowed in 1967, when her husband was killed in a farming accident, she raised her 2 young boys alone, earning money by babysitting other children. One son was now a priest in Prague. The other lived 2 kilometers away, so she often had lunch or dinner with him and her grandchildren. I said it was so good of Odette to shelter the Iraqis. She told us she admired the Jansams. They're a remarkable family, so generous, so kind. Marie-Catherine is a nurse. She comes by to take my blood pressure, to see what's wrong with me. She helps all the neighbors. She slipped the bain-marie into the oven. How long should the crème renversée bake? Maybe 20 minutes, it depends. And how hot? When you make it often, you don't worry about the exact temperature, she said, batting my question away with her hands. Another neighbor suddenly appeared in the kitchen. She had come upstairs without knocking. "I'm so sorry I'm late," she said breathlessly. "I was picking up all the branches in my garden after yesterday's terrible wind." Her name was Madeleine, and she lived next door. She was 83, and like Odette, she was dressed formally, in a skirt with a silk scarf artfully twisted around her neck. Later, I heard from the Jansams that Madeleine rarely helped others, but just as Marie-Catherine and François had tolerated the Iraqis with Christian forbearance, they put up with Madeleine. The latter always asked François to help her change the cylinder of propane gas she used for heating. She frequently prevailed upon Marie-Catherine to take her blood pressure, but she wouldn't teach David French, and she had dismissed Marie-Catherine's request to show us a dish. "I can't teach you anything. I do not know how to cook," Madeleine declared airily, as she settled into a kitchen chair. She had shown up at Odette's ostensibly to translate, even though we needed no help. It became clear that she wanted a chance to practice her English, which was charmingly accented, but disconcertingly blunt. More than half a century earlier, she told us proudly, she had won a 6-month scholarship to study in Cleveland and had sailed across the Atlantic. Later, she returned to France and became a social worker. She handled, as she put it, delinquents and murderers. The cleanup was simple, just 2 pots and a mixing bowl. Don't wash it, Odette said, pointing to the pot sticky with crystallized sugar. Just boil it with lots of water and pour it down the drain. And so here's the recipe. Odette's crème renversée serves 8. 1 liter whole milk, 6 eggs, 2 cups sugar divided, 2 teaspoons vanilla extract. Preheat oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. Melt 1 cup of sugar with 3 tablespoons of water in a saucepan over medium heat. Watch attentively. Sugar burns fast. When golden, pour molten sugar into 8 oven-proof ramekins or 1 medium-sized metal mold. Tilt so the caramel covers the sides. Mix milk with half a cup sugar and heat until steam rises. Set aside. Whisk eggs and remaining half a cup of sugar until pale and thick. Add vanilla extract. Temper egg-sugar mixture with warm milk, ladle by ladle, while whisking constantly until the temperature of the egg-sugar mixture itself becomes warm. Then add it to the remaining warm milk. Pour into the ramekins or mold. Put ramekins or mold into a bain-marie, a baking pan filled halfway up with hot water, and bake at 325 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes or until the flan moves slightly when you shake the pan. If it trembles like unset jello, it needs another 5 to 10 minutes. Odette's tip: to clean the pot in which you caramelize sugar, fill it half full of water and bring it to a boil. Swirl. Once the caramel dissolves, dump it down the drain. Our work finished, Odette finally sat down. She mentioned she'd read online about the sad case of Benoit Viollet, a Michelin-starred chef who had just committed suicide. The article said he'd lost a fortune on fraudulent wine and had probably been headed for bankruptcy. They must have been desperate for money, she added, because 2 days after his burial, his restaurant had reopened. I don't have internet, Madeleine replied dismissively. I like to look at my birds. They had been next-door neighbors for 40 years. Like an old married couple, they argued over everything, including whether Sam and I should witness a pig slaughter. Marie-Catherine had been working on the problem for several days now and solicited their advice on how to find a traditional winter toile. Madeleine, I was learning, was not very helpful, whether with translation or pig slaughters. It's forbidden to kill a pig, she said flatly. No, you can kill a pig, said Odette, mais ça finit en février. No, you need a permit, said Madeleine, suggesting we ask the village butcher if we could work with him. The butcher won't let you watch, said Odette. He wants to keep the recipes a secret. She got up heavily from the table to check the flans. When she shook the bain-marie, the flan in the mold still jiggled, but the smaller ones were perfect. The cookbook had helpfully said to bake the flan until it is ready. Odette pulled out the entire batch. That evening, despite her bad legs, she carried over all the flans to the Janssens. Her crème renversée was smooth as satin. Technically, you're supposed to unmold the flan, but we didn't bother. So when you hit the golden sugar at the bottom, just call it caramel surprise. So that's from Jan Wong's Apron Strings, published by Goose Lane. Thanks for listening today.